So you've done a lot of work on bone health, and you've talked about this combination of sort of calcium, vitamin D, and vitamin K. A lot of people don't understand the interaction between these nutrients. Can you walk us through why do they matter, and why do they matter all together, and how do you make sure you have the right balance here?
They matter because if you don't have them, you're going to get cavities, weak bones, your exercise and sexual performance is going to dry up, and other bad things will happen to you. And the reason that they're important together is because they work together. So vitamins A and D co-regulate a lot of different gene expressions, which determines what proteins get made and in what amounts. And some of those proteins are activated by vitamin K in an enzymatic process, with vitamin K2 being the dominant form of vitamin K that's relevant to that. And those include proteins that protect your blood vessels from calcification, like matrix GLA protein, or make sure that you do calcify your bones and teeth. Actually, matrix GLA protein does all of that. There's another one, osteocalcin, that used to be thought was involved in bone mineralization, but later turned out to be a hormone released from bone. And so vitamins A and D co-regulate its production. Vitamin K activates it and allows it to bind to bone. And then during bone resorption, it gets released and has a bunch of important effects that help optimize glucose metabolism, help shuttle energy into muscle during exercise, and also has, at least in males, a very important role in maintaining fertility. And I think there's actually a lot of people that so vitamin A is the controversial one. It's super clear that vitamins A and D are equal partners in this, but I think there's a historical pendulum of vitamin A to D ratio that people like, and we are in a swing. We've been in a swing. I think maybe we're reversing now. No, actually, I would say we're in a blow off top of hatred for vitamin A because um because it's culminated in there's a whole school of thought that vitamin A is a toxin, that it's not a vitamin, and that regulating gene expression is code for damaging the DNA.
Hmm.
And I think those people are nutcases, but what it shows you is that, if you looked at this 10 years ago, you would have said, oh, the pendulum is really swung in favor of, I mean, just to give you some historical insight, in the 1920s, Sir Edward Mellanby, who discovered vitamin D, he did some experiments that indicated that vitamin A and not vitamin D was important to the immune system. So he called vitamin A the anti-infective vitamin. And luckily, they were using cod liver oil as their main source of vitamin A back then. And so they did get a lot of vitamin D from that. But the pendulum was vitamin A is like the vitamin that prevents infections.
Mm-hmm.
And then, 10 years ago, it was like, oh, vitamin D is super important to the immune system, but vitamin A is like and where it comes from is these population studies where they're looking at, they're applying a general perspective that in general, diseases of affluence involve too much stuff, not enough stuff. And then,
Right.
fat people have signs of vitamin A toxicity because vitamin A, historically, vitamin A vitamin A is known to be stored in hepatic stellate cells, which are, let's just call them vitamin A storing cells in the liver, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so historically, it was when retinol esters, which or the storage form of vitamin A rise above a certain ratio to the retinol, which is the not stored type of vitamin A, it indicates that like the liver's spilling it out, and it's a sign of vitamin A toxicity. Um, but fat people have fatty livers, and the triglycerides displace the storage of glycogen as well as vitamin A. And so as obesity goes up, you get elevated retinol esters because the liver's storage capacity is destroyed by the diet storing fat.
Right.
Um, and so you get, someone comes into this with the idea of like, I'm looking for all the stuff that people are eating too much of, and they see that and they're like, oh, what, vitamin A toxicity is a problem, but no one's going blind from vitamin A deficiency in America. And so all that kind of contributes to this, this sort of like, oh, we have too much vitamin A. But I guess my point now is, even though it's not ever going to be mainstream that vitamin A is a toxin with no nutritive value, the fact that this has exploded on the internet, to me, is like it's like the blow off top of the anti-vitamin A swing. It's just you thought it was going to start swinging back, and it just took off on a rocket ship up into that corner, and now it's going to start swinging back. If I have any influence over it, but
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy because I think we have hardly any vitamin A toxicity from my understanding. In fact, most people, like a large share of the population, doesn't consume enough vitamin A, and they don't necessarily convert carotenoids to retinol very, very well, right? I think there's, I mean, you probably know a lot about this.
My data makes me look like a cat. I
need all carnivore.
I've just been measuring my vitamin A, and I added like a ton of pumpkin, and on paper, I'm getting all this extra vitamin A. My vitamin A.
Well, it assumes a 12-to-1 ratio, right, with the RAE, and yeah,
but I mean, just looking at it in retinol, in the equivalents,
Yeah.
But which are also just.
It ranges from
individual variation around those is like.
There's a study that I like to cite. It's the conversion of carotenoids to retinol varies from 2-to-1 in an oil with beta carotene, right, versus 77-to-1 in raw carrots, and that's like just on average. Like you took all the genetic variants of people who can't really convert very well, and that could blow up even more. That's the average variation.
Circumstantial health variation and
health status,
nutrient and seed oils. At least in animals, seed oils destroy the conversion of beta carotene to retinol. But also just like, if you're iron deficient, you can't do it. And as you were saying in the beginning, that's kind of common, right?
Pretty common in women. Yeah, exactly.
So one of my chief problems is iron overload. But what I was trying to say before about that pendulum swing is that there is an appreciation of needing vitamin D and vitamin K together, but vitamin A is just almost universally lost, and I think it's because there's just so much antagonism of vitamin A that people just look at like the work that I did on, because I was the originator of all this ADK balance. Like, Kate Ream Blue wrote a book about K2, but that was largely derived from work that I had done in 2005, 6, 7 in the Weston Price Journal. And so I think that, it's like the whisper game. It just got filtered through enough sources, and people were like, vitamin A, oh, I'm not writing about that. So they just chopped it off, and then it just took on a life of its own. But these vitamin K dependent proteins, if you don't have vitamin A there, they're not it depends on which protein it is, but they're either produced in a very dysregulated way, or they're just not going to get produced unless you have A and D working together.
Okay. So A, D, K, calcium, all important. Obviously, when you look
Well, you
at
got to throw
broader,
phosphorus in there if we're throwing
yeah,
calcium.
phosphorus. We're looking at bone health, right? Okay, so maybe it's five we're talking about. For what nutrients for bone health then do you really want to make sure you have under control?
I don't. Yeah, I mean, you. I think this is good for like I don't know, like Googleable content or a clickbaity title, but it's not that great for like a genuine scientific thought process. I mean, so certainly you would disproportionately point out that bones are very largely made of collagen, calcium, and phosphorus. So like quantitatively, those things really stand out because around half the bone is protein, 95% of the protein in the bone is collagen. So collagen really stands out. If you're talking about um nutrition with respect to that, you would certainly point out that collagen peptides are disproportionately made into collagen versus the fully digested amino acids or the singular amino acids that make them up, and also that diets that are high in meat, eggs, and dairy, but low in bones and skin are kind of anti-glycine, which is anti-collagen, in the sense that the extra sulfur or the extra methionine in those diets will deplete glycine if it's not balanced properly. Um, so I think from a protein perspective, you could make an argument that you do want collagen in the diet from skin and bones, but you could at least say that you want a methionine glycine balance, and there's a few ways to do that. One would be to eat a plant-based diet. One would be to
Hmm.
eat a shellfish-based, where shellfish is the dominant source of protein in your diet, and the other is to eat nose to tail animal products by balancing the muscle meats with the bones and skin. So
Right.
that's like the protein part of it. And then calcium and phosphorus are overwhelmingly the big quantitative components of the bone. But and then you have to think about those being balanced though, because too much phosphorus is anti-bone because there is more calcium in the bone than there is phosphorus. And so if there's more phosphorus in your blood than there is calcium, then net bone resorption is a way to fix that, because if you release minerals from the bone, you will release more calcium than you will release phosphorus, and that will help to normalize a ratio in the blood that favors phosphorus too much. But that doesn't mean that you want a diet that's low in phosphorus. And when phosphorus is coming from foods, there's like no evidence that it contributes to bone resorption. Whereas when it's coming from soda and it's coming from additives, there's an ultra processed foods are full of unlabeled phosphorus. There's like people are
Hmm.
getting hundreds of milligrams a day of unlabeled phosphorus from additives in ultra processed foods. Those cause bone resorption, right? So I do think that like if you were like, what is the low hanging fruit of like the simplest thing I could do to my diet to improve my bone health? It would probably be just cut out ultra processed foods. Just get rid of them because of all
Fascinating.
that hidden phosphorus. But cheese is loaded with phosphorus and calcium, and cheese does not stimulate bone resorption. Like the amount of phosphorus in it, you would think does, but it doesn't. And whether that's because it's properly balanced with the calcium, that's probably the main reason. But all these things have food matrix effects and other stuff. But I think that it's wrong to like say these are the 5 nutrients that you need for your bones, because quantitatively the calcium and phosphorus are the bulk of the stuff that's there, but that doesn't negate the importance of the bicarbonate that's in bone, or the magnesium that's in bone, or the copper that's in bone.
Mm.
And actually, there's very little copper in bone, but the copper is playing an electrical signaling role in the response to tension that helps the bone build in response to its environment. So for you to say like, "Oh, I don't see much copper in there," and just say it's not important is, I think, the wrong way to look at it. It's sort of like if you looked at a house and you were like, "Oh, this is primarily made of wood." Um, well, I
Yeah.
guess we don't need, metal